Well, we wanted to look into that FreeVPN One situation. I kind of went down the rabbit hole a little bit. So, yeah, let's go ahead and talk about this today. Thanks for checking out this video by Switch to Linux. If you like this type of content, please feel free to subscribe to the channel, leave us a like and a comment down below. I do want to address VPNs and something I've talked about in the past that I think is worth bringing up again, and that is that probably about maybe a decade ago, the concept of privacy has started to increase itself down the world. And so all sorts of privacy companies have popped up, most of which want a lot of your data, which is very interesting. But the idea of VPNs are pushed all over the place. Even mainstream content for creators are talking about VPN. You got to get a VPN. The only way to keep yourself safe and anonymous online. And guys, I mean, I know I'm speaking mostly to a tech audience, but if you happen to wander over here curious about VPNs or things like this, our IP addresses have not been used as the primary means to follow us around for a long time. These big tech companies that track you around the internet, they do not give a darn tootin' if you're on a VPN or not. They still know who you are because of other patterns that you do. The fact that most people stay logged into accounts like Google and Facebook and YouTube, things like this, that as you stay into accounts, it doesn't matter if you're on a VPN or not. Your data is still being tied into these advertising profiles, data broker profiles, and everything. The only way to stop that from happening is to anonymize the IP address while you are staying logged out of everything, choosing very specific browsers for your general searching the internet and clearing your cookies and cache frequently from time to time. Frequently from time to time. I don't know. That's a little bit of a misnomer, but that's okay. We'll go ahead and run with it. So, of course, if you're not following what happened, there is a VPN that for years was running just fine as a VPN. And all of a sudden, it kind of went a little nutsoid. And as it went back a little bit nutsoid, then what we ended up seeing with it is that it started collecting and harvesting a lot of data, and that in and of itself was a little suspicious. So this was called FreeVPN.One. It was available for the Chromium-based browsers, so Google Chrome, Brave, Vivaldi, anything else based on the Chrome engine, Edge. So you could get this, and it was a free VPN. Now, here is the warning I've always given people about VPNs. A VPN was not designed initially for your privacy. A VPN was designed so you could access network resources in another infrastructure. You use a VPN, a byproduct of it is that it masks your IP address because it then goes to the internet with the IP address of the server you're logging into. Okay. And that allowed you to access the remote servers and access network shares. I use these as a college professor, for example. We would VPN into our college network, and then I could access all of my files and things from the university from my house. And so that's what the VPN was used for. But somewhere around the line, people realized, oh, you could just block your IP. And this is about the time that IP tracking was the biggest way that companies were tracking you around the internet. And so they're like, hey, if you just use this VPN, you can hide your IP address. And all of a sudden, because people don't know how the tracking and data collection works, they think that that protects them from being tracked online. It doesn't. All right. Now, a VPN is a very useful thing for if you're working at coffee shops a lot. So you can encrypt your network traffic back to somewhere that is more trusted. Now, what about your residents? Well, it depends. Do you trust your IP or your ISP or not? If you can trust your ISP, and most of us would say no, then you might want to consider the VPN. And then you have this issue of, can you trust your VPN company? Because there's a lot of VPN companies that are owned by only a small handful of groups. Some of those have been tested in court, some of them have not. But with all this VPN push, people have been creating all sorts of VPNs all over the place. The challenge with a VPN is when you connect to a VPN, whoever owns that service can literally watch everything you do. They can log everything you do. They can spot everything that is going on. Now, in many instances, you get your mainstream, like your Proton VPN and your Malvad VPN, even some of the other ones that have fallen out of favor a little bit, like your NordVPN and ExpressVPN. Many of those have been demonstrated to not actually produce logs and not collect any of that information. By and large, they are mostly trusted companies. And I caveat that mostly because there is some question and concern behind the scenes. But you had all sorts of free VPNs that are jumping up on the VPN hype. So Facebook was doing one where they were offering kids like, hey, it's not only is it free, we'll pay you like $20 gift cards to use our VPN. And I forget the name of that one. But that is literally giving Facebook 100% access to every single thing you do on your internet. And they were utilizing that data for their purposes. And that's the challenge. You use a free VPN, you are at their mercy to do what they are saying to do. Because I got news for you, running a VPN is not free and it is not cheap. You can create a little VPN on your own home network or even your own cloud server network, and you can give access to a dozen or so people, and you could use that VPN service, and it might cost you $5-10 a month to do that. Of course, you're tied to one specific IP address unless you're constantly changing your IPs, which is possible as well. But you can control if it's logged or not, and you're basically just protecting your ISP, but you still kind of have to trust whoever the infrastructure is of that company. By and large, I think most of those cloud companies that you're paying a lot for ongoing service are probably more trustworthy. So there's always that. But then here is a extension pops up. This is called FreeVPN One. And what they did is they started doing this grand experiment where they were pushing for starting to collect all your URLs and collect your screenshots for all part of an AI rebranded way of getting in there and collecting a bunch of data. Now, they said we're not collecting or storing any of this data, but can we really know that? That's an interesting question. And there was also evidence that they were collecting data even if you did not opt into the AI stuff for their threat protection models, is what they were saying. Curiously, it's also was based on a UK company, which is also interesting in light of the rules that have recently passed about allowing backdoors and things like that. So let's dig into this a little bit here, and I have some thoughts and concerns that we're going to mention here as well that we can think of going forward. And so effectively this goes into the basic report about how the VPN company, they came in here and they swapped their terms of service, allowing them to collect information, but they did it really slowly and in segments. Now, the problem is, the biggest challenge with this is this was a Google verified app that was being promoted, which is interesting because Google really wants us to trust them. In fact, starting, I think, next year or the next version of whatever it happens to be soon, they want to block any sideloading of apps on your devices unless the developers are all verified, citing that 50% of malware comes from sideloading. Well, what about the 50% of malware that comes from Google Play Store apps? They didn't mention that. And so now they want to verify everybody that is submitting apps to Google and not even allow you to sideload apps unless they are verified, which is dystopian nightmare nonsense. And it's my phone. Let me do with it what I want. If I'm the moron that sideloads a malicious app, well, that's my problem, not yours, right? So this is the company that wants us to trust them all the way. Interesting. But what happened is KOI Security, they spotted that this VPN was actually collecting a lot of information. We're going to reject all cookies there. And so they had an interesting timeline, because we're going to get to this timeline in a moment here. So people turn to a VPN for privacy, and its verified age, verified badge, featured prominent in 100,000 plus installs. FreeVPN One looked like a safe choice, but once it's in your browser, it's not wrong. It's not working to keep you safe. It's constantly watching you. So this was actually their page here, 100,000 users. It is featured. You can see that. So then they break down how the surveillance actually works. Basically it was doing some silent stuff. You can basically think of this the exact same thing as Microsoft's recall application. Isn't that fascinating? So it's randomly taking screenshots and then it's uploading those into a server. And then what it would do is, after realizing, oh, there could be some issue, where they end up changing a little bit of what they're doing just so that they can better encrypt that traffic so people can't see what's going on. And this is all part of an AI threat detection model, is what the company said they were doing. So the app, once you get it installed, many of the defaults want to automatically apply updates, or at least nag you constantly if there are updates. If you update it, you may not be as concerned to read the privacy policy through the second time. So what's interesting here is that FreeVPN One is requesting all URLs, tabs, and scripting that opens the door to persistent surveillance, so it can monitor tabs that you're not even looking at. With all URLs permission, it gains access to every site that you visit. The broad reach lets it inject content script anywhere you go, and it uses permissions to quietly send a capture viewport message that triggers screenshots on every page you open, all without you even noticing. So it will take a copy of everything. It's then uploading those up to a server it had. So it was started for a number of years as just a VPN. All right, so what happened here? Well, in April of 2025, they started opening the door. It arrives at a quiet update, unremarkable, hiding the critical change, the all URLs permission. That meant the extension could now access every site you visited, far more than a VPN should ever need. At this point, although the permission was allowed broader access, the content scripts were still limited to VPN providers' domains. No spying yet, the door is simply open. In June, they start testing the limits. A rebrand to include AI threat detection expanded the content scripts to every website you visit and added scripted permission to users that looked like a security upgrade. In reality, the developer was experimenting with seeing how far he could go without raising suspicions. I want you to remember that date, June of 2025. I want you to remember that, because I have I'm hesitant to bring it up, but I have some interesting speculation, and that date's going to come back again today. And then you remember this date also. July is also an interesting speculatory date. In May, the domain AITD was registered. A month later, version 3.13 shipped and the spying went live. Silently sent screenshots on every site. Collection began tracking your location, harvesting your data, and data exfiltration commenced sending everything to a new AITD.1 servers. And in July, he starts covering his tracks. Realizing the data theft was detectable, the developers added EAS 256 encryption, RS key wrapping, and switched to a new subdomain, scan.aitd.1. Same behavior, harder to detect. What started as a trusted VPN is now an always-on window into what you're doing online. They've earned verified status, even featured placement on the Chrome Web Store, and Chrome claims to perform security checks on new versions of extensions using automated scans, human reviews, and monitoring for malicious code or behavior changes. The reality is these safeguards all failed. Again, the company that wants to force us to trust them in all of their development. Okay, so the developer's perspective tested against reality. We've reached out to the developer aiming to understand whether there had been a misunderstanding. He provides several explanations. Unfortunately, the observations did not match his claims. He explained the automatic screenshot capture is part of a background scanning feature, which would only trigger if a domain appears suspicious. In practice, we saw screenshots being captured on trusted devices, services like Google Sheets and Google Photos. He said background scanning was initially enabled for all users by default, with plans to change it, so future update would require explicit consent. Till that change rolls out, though, screenshots are being captured. He stated screenshots were not being stored or used, only analyzed briefly for potential threats. Difficulty here is the claim cannot be independently verified once they leave the user's devices, as though we confirm they are not retained. When asked to provide evidence of legitimacy, such as a company profile, GitHub account, or LinkedIn page, the developer stopped responding to emails. Only visible trace was tied. The email tied to phoenixsoftsol.com, which currently resolves to a free tier Wix template page. No signs of being a real company. He claimed he had served his users faithfully, providing free VPN services for 5 years without ever selling their data. Claims is difficult to verify, already requires us to trust the developer. But even if we can take it at face value, offering a free VPN does not grant the right to secretly capture people's screens. Okay, so this is actually the company, the Phoenix Software Solutions. It is a simple one page with a contact. Nothing else about it. This is a shell company that is set up in Delaware. I don't think I have that open. There is absolutely nothing about the company. It is just a shell company in Wilmington, Delaware, where tons of other shell companies happen to be created. So that is where that one shows up. Now, this also though is tied to FreeVPN.One, the website. Okay, so this is actually a listing of the various domains: FreeVPN.One, AITD.One, AITD.One. Those were individual things. So this is the FreeVPN.One website. This one is still live. The Phoenix Software Solutions site is down. Okay, so if you hover over this, you'll see what the URL extension is down there. It starts with JCB. Verified all that. That, of course, goes to this is the Phoenix Software Solutions. Here is the Phoenix Sol. You'll see this was registered 2017. It expires 25/11. Most likely that will be deleted. Here is the FreeVPN.One domain. You'll see it was registered in 2018. It expires 2025 in December. And here is the AITD.One. You'll see that this was registered just in May. And you'll notice that the male-female name servers match for both of those, although this one is using the basic GoDaddy servers. DNS. So the FreeVPN.One and the server that was used for the scanning, those are actually tied to the same account. So Cloudflare uses they use two name servers for their basic accounts, one male, one female, and to have both of those matching would be extraordinarily rare. So this kind of ties them both to the same person. Of course, the extension is now taken down, although when the original article came up 2 days ago, apparently the extension was still up. It's now taken down. This is one of the screenshots. This is from August, right about the time all the publicity was made. And one of the things you notice here is the website goes to FreeVPN.One, and you'll see the email goes to hello@phoenixsoftsalt.com. Now, that was one of the other things that he changed. A previous snapshot from September goes back, and you'll see that it's CMO Ltd, 27 Old Gloucester Street in London. So I looked that company up on the UK company stuff, and again, it's just generic shell company type stuff. So we have the basic address, and what you'll see here is that the person has not made up their account. So when you have an LLC in America, you have to pay an annual fee for the licensing of it, or semi-annual. There's different ways you can do it. And apparently they didn't pay their bills up to then. They ended up getting that paid, but now they have it. It is now, as of right now, past due. And over here, they actually have a compulsory notice that basically says that if you do not pay in a couple months' time, that the Crown is going to seize all company assets. Well, there's no real company assets. And you'll see the only officer listed is this person here. And from Cyprus. And this, I spent some time looking into this. I cannot find any connection at all to any person by this name other than a microbiologist who has a couple papers, not a computer scientist. So basically, this appears to also be a shell company, which he let die as part of this project. Now, here's the problem. We don't know who this is. We know that they ran this VPN company doing who knows what for several years. And now all of a sudden, going back, we don't need this tab anymore. I do want to see, though, this one down here. I want to keep an eye on these dates because there's some interesting speculation here that I want to show here. That is that right about the time this extension was starting to experiment, another extension by almost the exact same name showed up. FreeVPN.live. Interesting. So whereas this is FreeVPN.one's website, this is FreeVPN.live's website. Once again, not a lot of information. And the same developer behind that also has Anami VPN. Also, look at this. Featured. Verified. Featured. Verified. Featured. Well, would you like to take a random guess about when this showed up? Let's find the reviews. So what I did is I looked at our reviews, and wouldn't you know it, that this extension apparently first showed up July of 2022. Remember back to our timeline. I'm going to drop these old who is. We don't need those anymore. Don't need that. And keep that open. July, they register this, and in July 17th, they start the spying right about the same time. It's another free extension drops. But he has another extension, and that is the Anami. And would you like to guess when this one came up? So let's go down to the first known reviews. June of 2025. So around the time that the testing started, Anami VPN shows up. And about the time the actual spying started, FreeVPN.live shows up. Now, I am not 100% sure the same person is behind this. And one of the evidences I have for that is that the person behind this actually does appear to put information about them out there. So if you go back and you go down and see the information, we see that we have a developer here listing a Google and even a phone number. Now, I cross-referenced this phone number, absolutely no hits except the two extensions. So both extensions are the same developer. Let me go back to there. The two extensions are the same exact developer, linked to the same phone number, linked to the same email address with a Sri Lankan address. Okay. They also have a couple of apps. And I did do a video a couple weeks ago on being very careful about money and budgeting apps. I would refer you to go back and watch this. But this person has an app here and an app on Meow Chain Blast. So basically a game. So this developer is putting their name and their address and things, assuming that's all correct information, except I cannot find any hits on this name or on this email address except for these apps. This is the only place I can find these apps. So is this just the latest iteration? Let's let the London company burn. Let's let the Delaware company burn and reincorporate over here. And let's make it look a little bit more legitimate. I do not know. And I am not saying at all this is the exact same person. Don't hear that. I'm saying it's very suspicious that the time he starts testing his limits, one VPN opens. And the time that he starts doing the spying, another VPN opens. Both VPNs are now on the Google Chrome store, verified. Both popping up at the same time. So I decided it'd be interesting to have a look at the three websites. So these are the three websites that he has for these. They follow similar trends. And the who is for the FreeVPN.live, you'll notice is also using a basic Cloudflare account. They are registered to a different domain as well. So I looked into that. But I wanted to have a look at the website makeup here. And looking at the website makeup of all of these two we know are the same developer. They do differ a little bit, mostly because they're just using different templates and themes. What I found interesting, though, is there is one mark in here that is fairly uncommon in modern web design, and that is to have a giant inline style sheet like this. Now, we do not have an inline style sheet over here, and presumably because this one here has its own style sheet here, this is how you would typically do a style sheet. But what's interesting is that we also have a very similar style of dropping an inline style sheet on the original VPN.one site. So both VPN.live and FreeVPN.one both have a fairly uncommon thing for web developers to do, to drop in a giant style sheet. Is that enough evidence? Absolutely not. I just thought it was interesting as I was looking around. What I thought was most compelling to me is that right at the milestones of new features coming into the original one, which I think was possibly a test of what you could do, we have two separate free VPNs coming by the same exact developer with timestamps of the creation of those projects about corresponding to the tests in the other app, which is an interesting thing to think about. Again, I am not saying at all that this is the same person behind the FreeVPN.one. I'm just saying it is suspicious. Now, here is the biggest evidence it's probably not the same person, is that this person is also tied to a big YouTube channel. And if you go through, this is really the only other spot where I actually found a connection, and that's the Kitty Cuts account. So he has a TikTok and Instagram. There's he has, this is the link back to the Meow Chain Blast, and over here I think is where he has a playboard.co, and this actually ties his whole email back to the same thing. So because he has such a big channel, the channel is definitely Sri Lankan. Everything else seems to be Sri Lankan. I don't think it's the same person. Maybe this is a guy that's watching what's going on and is going to capitalize on free VPN headlines. That is a possibility. I am not discounting that. But I think that there is more than a coincidence that two free verified VPNs for the browser extension come up right at the critical timestamps of the tests in the other one. But by the way, this channel does have some really cute cat videos. So if you like cat videos, it is a big channel. He's got mostly cat shorts, but he does have some really fun cat videos. So if you like cat videos, go check out the channel over there. And again, I am not suggesting that this is the person behind it. I am saying maybe we need to do a little bit more investigation and dig a little bit deeper into who is running that original one. And why do we have very, 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 very similar free VPNs already showing up very recently with very recently and already featured on the Google Play Store. And by the way, look at the creation date. The creation date for the FreeVPN.live is right before the July 15th date when all of this tracking went live. That is an interesting thing to me. So this website did not exist. And you know what? I didn't even look up exactly how long this website was at. So let's go ahead and we're going to do this. We're going to do this. Going to paste that in there and grab this. I've completely forgot to do this. Let's see how long ago this domain was registered. Okay, so this domain was also just registered. So the June, we don't have an exact date stamp on this one, but in June 2025, we start testing the limits. And in June 2025, this VPN was created, website launched, and then the VPN was launched. Oh, I didn't even notice. Look at that. Oh my, that's interesting. Because FreeVPN.one was this pork bun. That might actually be enough to say, let me pull this up real quick. Let me go recently closed tabs. I'm just opening up recently closed tabs. FreeVPN.one, pork bun. Anami VPN, pork bun. Yeah, I didn't even look that up earlier. This one's Spaceship Inc. So FreeVPN.live went with a different registrar. That there is enough to say, and And you'll see that these two here are running the same. These is the FreeVPN Live and the Anami VPN is there. So yeah, that kind of moves my suspicions up a little bit higher. I'm not making solid accusations. I'm saying researchers who are much better at doing this kind of stuff might want to see if the person behind Anami VPN and FreeVPN.live are the same person behind FreeVPN.one. Because it seems to me like there's enough here to question what in the world is going on. And maybe the big point of story here is do not use free VPNs that you download from the extension store, because even if it starts faithfully years ago, well, maybe it won't end faithfully. In fact, I'm curious now, how long's this YouTube channel been up? You know what's interesting too? All of the creation dates of this channel, the Kitty Cuts channel, was also 2017, the same date as the founding of the Phoenix Solutions. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that was also very close to the same date as the London company as well. So there is enough suspicion here. Do not use any free extension for VPNs. Use something reliable like Proton VPN, Malvad VPN. I think I might still have a NordVPN affiliate link. They've kind of fallen a little bit out of favor, but I think that they are still reasonable. But again, not everybody needs a VPN, so consider that for your fact as well. So let me know your thoughts about all this. Am I onto something here, or am I just digging a little bit too deep down the rabbit hole, or maybe the kiddie hole? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.